It all started on a Friday morning in early October, just when the crisp air was starting to bite, and the leaves on the trees outside Lincoln High were burning with reds and golds. It should have been an ordinary day, the kind where you're counting the hours until the weekend, swapping inside jokes with your friends, and barely paying attention to the announcements over the loudspeaker. But that day, the air inside the school felt different. Heavier. Almost like everyone knew something I didn't. I noticed it the second I walked through the main doors. People were whispering in corners, eyes darting toward the lockers at the far end of the hallway. Normally, that's where my best friend, Emily Carter, would be waiting for me. Emily always had a way of brightening up even the most boring mornings. She'd be leaning against the metal, her backpack hanging off one shoulder, sipping an iced coffee she shouldn't have been able to afford on her allowance, grinning like she knew a secret. But that morning, she wasn't there. I scanned the hall, searching for her blonde ponytail, but instead I caught the sharp, judgmental glance of Marissa Blake, the self-proclaimed queen of our class and the kind of person who somehow always knew everything before anyone else. She smirked when she saw me, then leaned over to whisper something to her friend Brittany. Both of them looked straight at me and laughed. My stomach twisted. When I finally spotted Emily, she was standing near the office, her face pale, eyes wide, like she was trying not to cry. Mr. Henson, the vice principal, was next to her, holding a clipboard. I rushed over. What's going on? I asked, my voice low so no one could hear. She looked at me like she wanted to answer, but her lips trembled. Then Mr. Henson cut in. Olivia, this doesn't concern you right now. You need to get to class. Didn't concern me? Emily was my best friend. We'd been inseparable since 4th grade. Of course it concerned me. But before I could push back, they disappeared into the office, the heavy door shutting in my face. I just stood there, feeling like I'd been locked out of something important and bad. By 3rd period, the rumors had already spread. Apparently, someone had stolen over $3,000 from the senior class fundraiser, money we'd been collecting for months to pay for our prom, senior trip, and yearbook. The story was that Emily, who was treasurer for the student council, had been the last person seen handling the money before it went missing. At first, I laughed. It was ridiculous. Emily might have forgotten to return a library book or accidentally kept my hoodie for 3 months, but she wasn't a thief. She cared about this fundraiser more than anyone. She was the one who convinced half the senior class to sell cookie dough door to door just to meet our goals. But the more people I tried to tell that, the more I got those same looks Marissa had given me earlier. Smirks. Raised eyebrows. That sure, Olivia tone, like I was just too naive to see the truth. At lunch, Emily sat alone in the far corner of the cafeteria. No one went near her. The table she usually sat at, with me, Jake, Hannah, and a few others, was quieter than usual. Jake was scrolling through his phone, shaking his head. This is insane, I said, sitting down across from him. You guys can't seriously think Emily did this. Jake shrugged. I don't know, Liv. She was in charge of the cash box. And now it's gone. It doesn't look good. I couldn't believe it. You're really buying into this garbage? Hannah looked uncomfortable. It's not garbage, Olivia. People saw her counting the money after the last meeting. And she didn't show up to school yesterday. That's because she had a dentist appointment, I snapped. Then why didn't she say that? Hannah asked quietly. I realized then how quickly people can turn on you, not because they know the truth, but because it's easier to believe the worst. It's cleaner. Neater. No one wants to sit with the girl everyone's whispering about, because then the whispers might turn on them. That afternoon, I waited by Emily's locker. When she finally showed up, she looked exhausted, like she hadn't slept. Her eyes were red. Hey, I said gently. We need to talk. She glanced around the hallway. Not here. We ended up sitting in my car in the nearly empty student parking lot. She didn't speak for a long time. I waited, watching her twist her hands in her lap. They think I did it, she finally said. her voice barely above a whisper. Even my mom asked me this morning if it was true. Emily, no. I know you didn't. She looked at me like she didn't believe anyone could still say that to her. I didn't live. I swear. But they've got it all figured out. The money was last seen in the student council cabinet. I had the key. And now it's gone. There's gotta be another explanation, I said. Who else had access? She shook her head. They're not asking that. They're just done with me. I'm suspended from student council until they resolve the investigation, which is their nice way of saying I'm guilty until proven innocent. Something inside me hardened then. I didn't know how, but I was going to prove she didn't do it. I couldn't stand by while everyone treated her like some kind of criminal. And somewhere deep down, I had this feeling, an uneasy little knot, that someone wanted it to look like she was guilty. That someone had planned this. At the time, I didn't know just how far this would go. How many lies would unravel. Or how, by the end, the truth would destroy way more than just Emily's reputation. Because the real culprit was closer than I ever imagined. The weekend felt like it stretched forever. Every time my phone buzzed, I hoped it would be Emily saying something, anything, to make this whole mess feel less like a nightmare. But her texts were short, careful. She didn't want to talk about the fundraiser anymore. I couldn't stop thinking about it, though. My mind kept looping over the same questions. Who else had the key to the student council cabinet? Who would even want to steal from a school fundraiser? And most of all, why frame Emily? On Monday morning, I decided to start paying closer attention. If someone had set Emily up, they probably thought no one would look twice. But I was looking now. When I walked into school, I noticed something immediately. The people who used to hang out with Emily had rearranged themselves. Jake and Hannah were laughing with Marissa by the lockers, like nothing had happened. 2 weeks ago, Marissa wouldn't have even looked in their direction unless she wanted homework answers. That's when I realized Marissa had been on the student council too. She was secretary, which meant she also had access to the cabinet. She'd been one of the last people in the room at our last fundraiser meeting. I remembered that day vividly. Emily had been counting the cash while I helped pack up leftover cookie dough boxes. Marissa was on her phone the whole time pretending to take notes for the next meeting. When we left, Emily locked the cabinet and put the key in her bag. I didn't see her take it out again. But the next day, the money was gone. Hey, I said, walking up to Hannah between classes. Do you remember who stayed after the last fundraiser meeting? Hannah hesitated. I think. Just us, Jake, Marissa, and Emily. Why? Because, I said slowly, Marissa had access too. Hannah's eyes darted toward where Marissa was leaning against the wall, scrolling through her phone like she didn't have a care in the world. Liv, don't start something you can't prove. But that's the thing. I wasn't trying to start anything. I just wanted answers. That afternoon, I skipped my usual ride home and stayed late under the excuse of helping Miss Green, the art teacher, clean out supply cabinets. Really, I was hanging around to see if anyone went into the student council office. It was a cramped little room tucked near the back of the library, and since Emily was suspended, there were fewer people coming in and out. Around 4:15, I saw someone heading toward it, tall, messy brown hair, wearing a varsity jacket. It was Luke Foster, the student council president. He was also our school star basketball player and, conveniently, Marissa's boyfriend. Luke looked around before unlocking the office door. That alone made my heart race. Why would he need to check if anyone was watching if he was just there for regular council stuff? I slid behind the row of bookcases, keeping low so he wouldn't see me. He went inside, but the door didn't fully close. I crept closer and peered through the crack. Luke was digging through a filing cabinet, not the one with the fundraiser money, but the drawer right below it. He pulled out an envelope, glanced inside, and stuffed it into his backpack before leaving as quickly as he came. I barely had time to duck before he walked past me. My mind was spinning. Was that more missing money? Was Luke involved? That night, I called Emily. I think Luke might have something to do with this. She was quiet for a long time. Luke? No way. He's the one who suggested I keep the money in the cabinet so it would be safe. And besides, why would he frame me? I hesitated. Maybe it's not about you. Maybe it's about him needing the money for something, and you were just the easiest person to blame. Emily sighed. Liv, I appreciate you trying to help, but you have to be careful. If you start accusing people without proof, you'll just make things worse. I knew she was right, but I also knew what I saw. And I couldn't shake the image of that envelope disappearing into Luke's backpack. The next day, I started watching him. Between classes, after practice, even in the cafeteria. He was careful, too careful. But I noticed something else. Marissa was always around him, whispering, touching his arm, acting like she owned him. And every time I walked by, she gave me this smug little smile, like she knew I was onto her but couldn't do anything about it. By Wednesday, something strange happened. Jake stopped talking to me. Not just the short, awkward conversations we'd been having, but completely avoiding me. At lunch, he didn't sit at our usual table. In group projects, he worked with Marissa instead. It was like the whole friend group was shifting without me. I started to realize the truth in a way that hurt more than I wanted to admit. This wasn't just about Emily being accused. This was about someone actively tearing us apart. And I was next in line. But I didn't back off. After school, I went to the library and asked Mrs. Carter, the librarian, if I could help organize the student council files for extra credit. She didn't care as long as I kept quiet. When she left to shelve books, I went straight to the cabinet Luke had been in. The drawer he opened was empty now, but at the bottom, there was a scrap of paper with a partial phone number written in blue pen. I didn't recognize it, but something about the handwriting looked familiar. When I got home, I dug through my old yearbooks and found it, Marissa's signature from a cheerleading fundraiser page. Same loop on the two, same slanted numbers. My heart pounded. This wasn't just suspicion anymore. This was a thread. And if I pulled hard enough, I might unravel everything. By Thursday morning, I was running on caffeine, adrenaline, and stubbornness. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that scrap of paper with Marissa's handwriting. I didn't know exactly what the number meant, but I knew it connected her to whatever Luke was doing. The problem was, Emily still didn't want me to push this. She was keeping her head down, hoping the suspension would end quietly and life would go back to normal. But I couldn't stand the idea of her being the scapegoat while the real culprit walked free. That day in the cafeteria, I saw my opening. Luke and Marissa were sitting across from Jake and Hannah, laughing about something. I slid my tray down onto the table next to Jake's, forcing them to acknowledge me. Hey, I said, looking right at Marissa. Why were you in the student council office after hours? Her smile froze for half a second before she left. Because I'm on the student council? You're not. So why do you care? I saw Luke take an envelope out of the filing cabinet, I said. My voice was steady, but my heart was pounding. Then I found a note in there with your handwriting on it. You want to explain that? Luke's jaw tightened. You've been spying on me? It's not spying when someone's stealing from the school, I shot back. The table went silent. Hannah looked between us like she was trapped in the middle of a minefield. Jake wouldn't even meet my eyes. Marissa leaned forward, lowering her voice just enough to make me lean in too. Careful, Liv. You start throwing around accusations like that, people might start wondering why you're so desperate to protect Emily. Maybe you were both in on it. That hit me harder than I expected. Are you serious right now? Dead serious, she said, her smirk returning. And if I were you, I'd keep my mouth shut before you end up just like her. I wanted to launch my tray at her, but instead, I stood up and walked away. My legs were shaking, but not from fear, from rage. If she was threatening me, it meant I was closer to the truth than I thought. That afternoon, I decided I needed proof, real proof. Something I could take to Miss Daniels, the principal, that would force her to listen. So I did something I'd never done before. I snuck into the gym during basketball practice. The locker room door was propped open, and I slipped inside while the team was out on the court. Luke's locker was easy to spot. His name was taped across the top in blocky letters. My hands trembled as I spun the dial. I didn't know the combo, but I'd seen him open it enough to guess 32, 5, 17. When the latch clicked open, I felt a rush of victory. Inside, I found his backpack. And inside that, I found a wad of cash. No envelope, just loose bills folded together. I didn't have time to count it, but it was thick, thicker than any high schooler should have without a job. I was so focused on the money that I didn't hear the footsteps until they were right behind me. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" I froze. It was Jake. I stammered. "I can explain." "No," he snapped. "You're breaking into Luke's locker now?" "Liv, this is insane. You're not helping Emily. You're just making yourself look guilty." "Jake, listen to me," I pleaded. "Luke and Marissa are the ones who took the money." I found a note in her handwriting, and I saw him. He cut me off. "You think you saw something, but all you're doing is tearing apart what's left of our friend group." That stung more than I wanted to admit. "They're the ones tearing it apart, not me." He shook his head. "You're so obsessed with proving Emily's innocent that you're willing to throw anyone under the bus. I don't even recognize you anymore." I wanted to scream. Instead, I shoved the backpack back into the locker and stormed past him. My chest felt tight, not just from what he'd said, but from the fact that even Jake, the person I thought would believe me no matter what, was slipping away. That night, I lay awake replaying the confrontation. Marissa's threat. The cash in Luke's bag. Jake's disbelief. It all swirled together until I realized something. If no one was going to believe me, I had to catch them in the act. Not with scraps of paper or second-hand stories. I needed undeniable proof. And I had a plan. The next morning, I walked into school with my heart hammering like I'd run a mile. My backpack felt heavier than usual, but it wasn't from books, it was from the small camera I'd borrowed from my older cousin, the kind people use for skateboarding videos. Compact. Silent. Perfect for catching a thief in the act. I'd spent half the night planning how I'd use it. The student council office was only locked after hours, but during the day, there were plenty of times it was empty, especially when Ms. Carter, the faculty advisor, stepped out for lunch. I knew from watching Luke before that he preferred slipping in when the hallway was quiet, usually during third period. So I skipped third period. My stomach churned as I crouched behind the vending machine across from the office door, pretending to scroll on my phone while keeping one eye on the hallway. Sure enough, right on schedule, Luke appeared. Hoodie up. Hands shoved in his pockets. He glanced around, then pulled a key from his jeans and slipped into the office. I gave him a 30-second head start before moving. My hands shook as I pushed the door open just enough to slide the camera inside and wedge it between two binders on the shelf, angled toward the desk where the fundraising money was kept. I stepped back out, heart pounding, and went to wait in the library like nothing had happened. An hour later, I retrieved the camera. My hands were sweating so badly that I nearly dropped it. I tucked it deep into my bag and didn't dare check the footage until lunch. I found an empty corner in the cafeteria and hit play. The video was grainy, but clear enough. Luke opening the filing cabinet, pulling out an envelope, counting the cash, and shoving it into his backpack. My chest tightened with a mix of vindication and fear. I'd done it. I had proof. But then, the door opened again. Marissa walked in, shut the door behind her, and marched right up to Luke. She wasn't smiling. "You're taking too much," she hissed. We agreed. Half for you, half for me. My jaw dropped. Luke scoffed. "I'm the one taking the risk here. You think anyone's gonna suspect you? You're the golden girl, Marissa. You'll walk away clean." She crossed her arms. "Unless I tell them it was your idea." They stood there, glaring at each other, until Luke muttered something I couldn't make out and stormed out. Marissa calmly opened her purse, slid in part of the cash he'd left behind, and walked out like nothing had happened. By the time the video ended, my pulse was so loud in my ears that I almost didn't hear the voice behind me. "What are you watching?" I turned, and my stomach sank. It was Hannah. She peered over my shoulder before I could close the screen. Her eyes widened. "Is that— Oh my God, Liv, where did you get this?" I swallowed. I set up a camera. I had to. Emily's innocent. Hannah. They're the ones who. But she didn't let me finish. She bolted toward the lunch tables, calling for Jake. My gut twisted. This wasn't how I'd wanted it to happen. I chased after her, trying to grab her arm, but she'd already reached the table where Luke and Marissa sat. Jake was there too, looking confused. Hannah slammed her phone down. She'd taken mine from my bag without me realizing and hit play. The footage played out in front of everyone. Heads turned. Conversation stopped. Luke's face went pale. Marissa's went cold. "That's fake," Luke blurted. "She's editing stuff now." But no one was listening to him. The room erupted, people shouting, phones out, everyone either recording or whispering. Marissa stood up, towering over me. "You think this makes you a hero? You just destroyed our whole friend group, Liv. And for what? Emily's still not coming back." Something in me snapped. "She will come back. And you too? You'll be the ones answering to Ms. Daniels." Jake looked from me to the video, then back at Luke and Marissa. His expression hardened. "Is it true?" Neither of them answered. Luke just shoved past me and stormed out. Marissa stayed, but her smirk was gone. That was the moment I knew our friend group wasn't just cracked. It was in pieces. Luke and Marissa were suspended by the end of the day. The principal called in their parents, the school board, and even the police, though because they were both minors and most of the money was recovered, it didn't turn into a full criminal case. By Monday morning, word had spread to the entire school, and their reputations went from most popular to most avoided. People who used to worship them suddenly acted like they didn't exist. But if I thought clearing Emily's name would bring everything back to normal, I couldn't have been more wrong. Emily came back to school that week, her head held high, but her smile wasn't the same. She'd missed 2 weeks of classes and an entire soccer tournament, and although people apologized to her, I could see the hesitation in their eyes. Like they weren't sure how to treat her now that she'd been at the center of a scandal. Even our friend group, what was left of it, wasn't the same. Hannah apologized for doubting us, but she'd already drifted toward another group, hanging out with people from her art class. Jake stopped sitting with us at lunch entirely. One afternoon, Emily and I sat on the bleachers after school, watching the janitor sweep the gym floor. The silence between us felt heavy. "I thought I'd feel better," she said finally. "I mean, I'm not being called a thief anymore. Everyone knows the truth. But I still feel like I lost something I can't get back." I looked down at my sneakers. "You did. We both did. We lost trust. We lost them." She nodded slowly. "And maybe that's not a bad thing." That was the part I hadn't let myself admit. The truth had shattered our friend group, but maybe it had been cracked long before the fundraiser. Maybe Luke and Marissa had never been the friends we thought they were. Still, the victory felt hollow. I'd fought for Emily, I'd exposed the truth, but in doing so, I'd burned bridges I could never rebuild. The hardest part? The way Emily looked at me sometimes, like she wasn't sure if she should thank me or wish I'd never gotten involved. I knew she appreciated what I'd done, but I'd also put her name back in everyone's mouth, even if this time it was as the girl who was framed. Weeks passed. The gossip faded. People moved on to the next scandal, 2 seniors caught cheating on finals. But every time I passed Luke in the hallway, I saw the anger in his eyes. And Marissa? She acted like I didn't exist, which was almost worse than the glares. One Friday night, Emily and I went for milkshakes at the diner. We laughed about something small, an old inside joke about the time I'd tried to skateboard and ended up in a bush, and for the first time in months, it felt like we were us again. When we left, The sky was dark and the streets were quiet. As we walked to her car, Emily stopped and said, "Liv, I never said it enough. Thank you. I don't know if I would have made it through that without you." I smiled, but it was bittersweet. "You would have. You're stronger than you think." She shook her head. "No, I'm only strong because I have people like you in my corner." And maybe that was the point. Friend groups can fall apart. Trust can be broken. But the ones who stand by you when the world turns its back, those are the people who matter. When I got home that night, I lay in bed thinking about everything that had happened. About how one fundraiser, one lie, had changed everything. I thought about the version of me from a few months ago, the one who thought a friend group was forever. She was gone now. But maybe that wasn't a bad thing. Because the person I'd become, she knew better. She knew friendship wasn't about how many people sat at your lunch table, but about who stayed when the table was empty. And as for Luke and Marissa, they'd be just another cautionary tale at Lincoln High. But Emily and me, we were still here. Still standing. Maybe that was enough.